Hi there, in this video I just want to show you a bit of scripting that you may use for some kind of intro, outro, or just some bit of your mission scenario. The idea is that I'm going to place a vehicle here that will come and pick me up as the player. So I'll stop and I'll get into the vehicle. But then as we drive further down, the driver of the vehicle will be incapacitated, perhaps by a sniper or something. So that's the sort of story. It's just a little story. So if I start my vehicle down here, so I'll just make it a prowler. I think we'll make it a HMG prowler. But I do want a driver, but I want to be able to take any other position. So there's the driver, and I'll call the driver prowler driver, and that's not the player. Okay, so it's not the player. So there's the prowler driver, and I will be, let's say, outside this building, so here, looking out for the vehicle. It's going to drive up here, and let's just put the vehicle on its path. So it's the vehicle. It's going to have a waypoint. It's going to move. Let's give him a following the road sort of movement. So it's basically going to end right next to me. And then I shall call the vehicle. I shall give the vehicle a name. Prowler vehicle. As you can see, I've typed that in before. Because I want to play around with these variables and these object states, types, etc. That's why I've named them. So I've got a driver called prowler driver and a vehicle called prowler vehicle. And it goes along the waypoint and hits this one, and then carries on until it comes to me. So the vehicle will quite simply drive this. That's all straightforward. That's no problem. But what about it therefore stops here, but then I want it to move on after I've got in. There's a couple of ways of doing this actually. You could have a sort of waypoint trigger activation sort of method. I'm going to give a direct command actually to the prowler driver. That's how I'm going to do this. I sort of prefer that method, giving commands. So what happens is we shall set a trigger. And this trigger has a condition. And what it is that it is a blue for condition. So it is executed by the blue 14. And what happens is that the player is in the prowler vehicle. Now we could just leave it at that, in fact. So any player is in the prowler vehicle, any multiplayer, because this is going to be a multiplayer scenario. But if you wanted to, you could type a player name and say and player and name player is equal to, and then my call sign is PWH Slugster. So that's me in multiplayer. But you could, like I said, you could just check just that initial part of the expression there, that condition, just saying, look, is one of the human players in the prowler vehicle? But I actually would want to say, is it actually me? Is it And then what I'm going to do on activation is actually tell the driver to move to a particular point on the map, which I'm going to define as a marker position. So what I'll do is I'll just press OK for that for the moment, and just by this roundabout just here I shall put a marker. So I'll just have an objective marker just as we get to the roundabout, and I'll call it marker. Actually, I'll call it target marker. Oh, not target marker. Target marker. Okay, and I'll put the text there just so I can read it clearly. So that's target marker. So let me just go back to this trigger. So when I climb into the vehicle, and it's very specifically me in this scenario, I want to tell the Prowler driver to do a doMove, and I want him to move to that marker position target marker. So the condition is, if there's one of the players in the Prowler vehicle, and that player is particularly me, specifically me, just put a semicolon at the end there, then tell the driver to move to the position which is identified as target marker. So he'll immediately head towards target marker. So what I'll do is I'll save all this, and I'll call it get in vehicle test MP. Let's just play it. So here we are on the map. If it all goes to plan, he sort of hit the first waypoint, so he kind of slowed down there actually. So we can change that, and he pulls up right next to me. Get in, and the vehicle immediately starts driving. So there you go, I got in, and then the vehicle drove off. But what I want to do is just add a bit more to this. So that's how you get an AI driven vehicle to pick you up, to pick your unit up. It could be the whole group, it could be the whole unit, or just an individual. That's how you do that. But let's make it a bit more exciting, and we'll put in what we'll do is, after he's picked us up on the map here, we're going to put a trigger just across before the roundabout, where he's basically, the driver's basically incapacitated. So we'll put a trigger. It's a bit big. So literally just before, I think. Let's put it, I don't know, 30 meters. So it's quite a sort of narrow ish. Relatively high. How does that look? Let's just rotate that. That'll do. So we've got this trigger. That's activation. Is blue 4. So what's going to happen here is that when our driver, Prowler driver, gets to this point, then what did I make that? 30, yeah, that should be enough. Then on the activation of that trigger hit by blue 4, I'm going to say that the Prowler driver is incapacitated. So he's basically shot, and why not add a little sound effect. I've got this flare fired. That'll do. But you could add your own sound or use whatever. So let's just pull out a bit. This is actually a custom map that with PWH have built ourselves based on a real town of Dover, and we'll be releasing that as a map shortly. So there's the vehicle, you can see him there. Let's go back to the map view, to the 3D view. So the vehicle, Prowler driver in Prowler vehicle drives to there, then he drives to there and effectively waits really before we get in. The trigger checks that we're in, and the trigger also says, okay, I'm in, that particular player, so let's carry on driving. And where do we carry on driving? Well, there's a marker position here, but there's a trigger just before we get to the marker position, and this trigger sets, basically kills the driver, and then we have our little scenario. So let's just save that and play. Okay, so here comes our vehicle. Pulls up. Interesting. Looks like it's going to almost run me down then, in fact. Interesting AI. Let's get in the car. So there's nothing happening. He's just standing there. He won't do anything. Sorry. He's just sitting in the driver's seat. So let's go around and get on the right hand side so we can watch the character. He heads towards the roundabout. And wait for it. There we go. Incapacitated. Then we get out. And the driver's down. So there you go. It's just a little bit of scripting there. I thought it might be useful. Like I said, for a bit of sort of storytelling, really, mise-en-scene, mise-en-scène type, setting the scene, just setting up your scenario, and hopefully there's some little bits there that are of use. I found one thing about the triggers, just so you appreciate it, is the height of the triggers. So, just so you're aware, in case you're not, see how high I've made this trigger, and it drives through. Okay, just go to that trigger, and it's 10 meters or 10 units effectively. Well, let's set that to 1. Okay, so you see it's really low now. See how low it is on the ground. So we saw this all working fine. Well, now let's run it. Let's see what happens. And it's just something to be aware of when using triggers generally. So here they come. Hopefully the AI won't run me over. Stops at the waypoint around here. Get in, get to the left seat, just shift to the right. Okay, watch what happens. Trigger didn't fire. You see, he's survived this one. So the point I'm trying to make here is that when you make your triggers, you do have to be, from what I can say, and please correct me if I'm wrong, sort of all-encompassing. It has to sort of fully envelop that which is being used as the trigger object. So, i.e., one isn't high enough to cover the whole, basically the whole of the driver, and the blue full presence and the whole of the vehicle. So just make sure you set your triggers high enough to do it. I always like to keep them sort of lowish, otherwise they just shoot up into the sky and sort of blot the landscape, so to speak. Anyway, hope that's useful, and please leave any comments. Thank you very much.